felt myself fighting to get back into my body, to get back to my kids. And then I felt immediately it was like I got sucked out of that place and started coming back into consciousness, and I was very disoriented, and I was in a lot of pain, and there was this blinding, everything, the lights were so harsh, and the pain was so harsh, and the sounds were so harsh, and I opened my eyes, and the nurses were there, and I started to see that they had been through a horrible ordeal. There was blood everywhere. And the nurse is saying to me, what the older woman nurse is saying to me, let's get you out of these things. Let's get you out of these clothes, get you cleaned up. She's saying that to me, and they lift me up and put me on another bed, and they're stripping my clothes off, and they're all working really fast, and they're going around, they're cleaning everything up, they're wiping me down, they're changing the sheets, they're throwing all these blood-soaked linens into a hamper. They put me back on the bed, they prop me up, they pull up the blanket, they get me all kind of put together, and then they're sweating. They just look like they've been through. They're red-faced and flushed, and they look like they've seen ghosts, and they've been really, really scared. And the male nurse says to me, "You gave us quite a scare," and I'm not quite sure what happened. I'm still really, I go, I'm sorry, I feel I'm apologizing. And then they say, well, we got to go let your family, and they've been out there this whole time, as though I'd been around the whole time, like I knew what that would mean. I had, like they were trying to tell me, your family's been out there hearing this whole thing, and they're totally traumatized, and they're, but I have no idea what they've been through, I have no idea what happened. And so then they go and they give my family the thumbs up to come in. And the first ones to enter the room are my grandparents. And my grandmother's crying, and my grandfather's crying, and my grandmother says to me, "Oh my God, they called code blue twice, and they came rushing in here, and we had no idea. We thought we were going to lose you." This is what she says. And she leans out and kisses me, and my grandfather kisses me, and then they just kind of go stand to the side. Then my father-in-law comes in. He looks white as a sheet, and he just nods his head, and he said, "Oh, he can't even utter words. He's crying too." And he kisses me, and he goes and sits on the window ledge. Then my husband and my parents come in. They meander in slowly. They're not even looking at me. They're not talking to me. They're not showing me any kind of emotions. They're talking to each other. They don't say anything to me. And they stand at the foot of the bed, sort of in a huddle, talking about, I don't know what they're talking about, but they're not saying anything to me. And it's very surreal, very strange. It seems strange to me, but again, I don't know what's happened. And so I'm just trying to kind of get my bearings. And I remember saying, "Where are the kids?" And my husband says, "They're at my mother's house." And I said, "Oh," and I just really wanted to see them so badly. And then I said something about, I think I went to the other side or something like that. And my mother turns around. She's got her back faced to me at the foot of my bed. She turns around. She says to me over her shoulder, you were medicated or under sedation or something like that," and turns back around. And I didn't try and talk about it again after that. And I immediately knew that I had to put it all down and try and get back to my kids and focus on that. And I was very closed to the whole experience, and I had been told that I was going to forget a lot of what I saw, that I wasn't going to be able to remember a lot of what I saw, but that things would come back to me slowly. And that is exactly what happened. And then and I was in, and what basically happened too was that my life almost immediately went into crisis mode. My soon after this happened, my husband left me with my parents' support. I mean, he was lying about me, he was making up whole stories about how, you know, that this had something to do with drugs and all this stuff, and which I realized later, and he'd been sort of sabotaging relationships. And so what ensues in my life is just a nightmare that goes on for several years, for about 4 years, and the total dismantling of my life, where I end up surviving, and then losing everything that defined that life, losing every single thing that defined that life. And it was only after that happened that I started, that I had lost everything, and I was at the very lowest low, that I started to remember what had happened. And I started to remember that one of the things that I was told was that you already have everything that you need. You have everything that you need. And I understood that what I had was, I had this love I had for my sons, this love that I had from this infinite universe, this God, this, you know, however, I could still, I was still, I had a hard time with things that were too large, so I still had to keep God sort of like, it's something I could understand. And so God sort of seemed like still this sort of heavenly Father was a thing that I could deal with, because also that was really the only parent that I had to count on. And so that was a comfortable image for me to stick with. And once things got too metaphysical, they lost me anyway. But you know, there was so many things that went on in the next few years where I thought I was crazy anyway, and everyone was telling me I was crazy. So, you know, I didn't know how much of anything to believe. And so I don't know why it had to happen the way that it did, but my life went into absolute chaos. And I've heard some other stories where people have talked about their NDE stories where this happens. But it really did. My life went into absolute chaos after I survived this NDE. But then at my lowest low, like I said, it started coming back to me. This wisdom started coming back to me. I started remembering things that I saw, that I was told. And over the last 10 years or so, it's just come back to me piece by piece, bit by bit, as have memories of my childhood, which were also repressed and forgotten. And so I have a pretty cohesive memory now of everything.